My son has panic attacks. He's got that putrid, rotten Soprano gene.
It's a slight tick in his fight-flight response.
It's a sunny day in suburban backyard in New Jersey. It's a lively scene. A man wearing a maroon polo shirt, holding lighter fluid in his hands, smiling and enjoying the ducks' play. The man seems to be enjoying his cigar in the cheap entertainment. At the center of it all is Tony Soprano, mid-40s, broad-shouldered, commanding mob boss, standing by a smoking grill, prepping the burgers. It's a beautiful day, a man in his element, until he's not. The ducks flap their wings, a sudden burst of motion, and Tony's gaze locks onto them. The camera zooms in on his face. His smile fades, replacing by a flicker of something uneasy. Tony grows dizzy, grabs his chest, and his cigar falls out of his mouth. Tony's head is spinning, shaking. He drops the lighter fluid on the hot grill and faints, falling hard on the ground. Of all of the ways that they could have opened the pilot scene of The Sopranos, they chose to have Tony Soprano have a panic attack. And I love it. I love it. I love the fact that The Sopranos, they took a risk to open up the pilot episode of The Sopranos, and they decided to have the main character have a panic attack and fall and faint. Wow, that is awesome. That's like a therapist's dream come true. Let's pick a show like Sopranos and let's talk about panic attacks. I love it. I want to really talk about in this therapy scenes video about how Tony Soprano had repeated panic attacks. We call that a panic disorder. So even Tony Soprano had panic attacks. Tony Soprano was this protagonist of The Sopranos. He's this complex, larger-than-life figure. He's a mob boss. He's tough. Don't cross Tony. He'll hit you in the face. He'll kick you in the shins. And he'll chop your head off if he gets a chance. Don't mess with Tony. And yet Tony Soprano, this tough mob boss, has panic attacks, and that is a theme that we see throughout the series of The Sopranos. One of the opening scenes is Tony Soprano talking to his therapist. Yes! A mob boss, this tough alpha figure, admits that he needs to go and talks to a therapist. Oh, I love it. So many people deny they don't want to go to a therapist for lots of different reasons, but mainly because I don't need to talk to a quack. Right? I don't need to talk to a quack. I'll just pay the money and they'll just tell me what I want to hear. No, that is not reality. The reality is a therapist who is trained, a professional therapist is trained to help you walk through the traumas that you had in your life. A trained therapist will help you talk about and deal with some of the things that you've been putting off or burying. Tony Soprano's talking to a therapist because he's having these panic attacks. He's thinking he's having a heart attack. He scares his family, his wife, his kids. They don't know what to do. They're thinking that maybe he's having all these heart attacks, and that's not what's happening here. And as Tony is talking to his therapist, he's realizing, the therapist is helping him realize that a lot of his panic attacks is coming from his childhood, that inner child. So even Tony, who is this rough and tough mob boss, you don't cross Tony, he has a childlike essence, his emotions, his inner child that's attached to his childhood growing up. His parents weren't really loving. They might say that they loved him, but then they switched and turned around and they didn't show it. In fact, a lot of times they did the opposite. And so it was a mixed dynamic for Tony. On one hand, his parents said that they loved him. On the other hand, that they didn't show that he loved them. And it was this conflicting tension that he had growing up. He always questioned whether or not he was loved or supported. And so now as an adult, he's this leader of this mob boss. And there are certain times where the stress gets so intense because it's a trigger. Something that he saw or something that he heard or a person, some kind of sensory issue is going on his body is reacting because of a an event or a lifestyle or an environment that happened when he was a child. And that is the essence of panic attacks. It's your body's way of revealing to you, to show you that something is off. It's your body's way of telling you that there are things in your life that you have not addressed yet. It's your body's way of saying, hey, wake up, something's off here. Go back, look at these things in your life that you're trying to bury or forget. And that's what a therapist will help you do. A therapist will help you go and unpack the things that maybe you don't even know need to be unpacked. Tony struggled with an inner child when he saw things or when things happened around him, or maybe in the middle of beating someone up. His heart would race, his mind would race, he would get clammy, he would get sweaty, and then his whole world would get dizzy, and boom, he would fall and he would faint, just like if he was having a heart attack. And that's what happens when people have repeatedly panic attacks over and over again, recurring panic attacks. Tony had recurring panic attacks, and we call that a panic disorder. And a panic disorder is, I talked about this before, in panic attacks, there is a bell curve, a panic cycle where it goes up and then comes down, and in the middle, and that's the peak of the bell curve, and that's when it gets intense the most. And that's when Tony faints, falls to the ground, and people rush to him and think he's having a heart attack, something bad is happening. And something bad could happen if he were to fall, and he would fall and hurt himself, or maybe he would be driving and have a panic attack and faint. He could get in a wreck. So things can happen, but the panic attack themselves is not going to hurt you. You're not going to die from a panic attack unless you fall and faint or something happens from that as a result of that. It's not like a heart attack. When you have a heart attack, that's something that could kill you. But a panic attack won't hurt you, or most likely won't hurt you. So it's hard to know sometimes the difference. And if you don't know if you're having a panic attack, by all means, go to the hospital and get there and be able to let the doctor say, no, it's not a heart attack, it's a panic attack. By all means, do that. But if you had panic attacks, you start to understand, oh, this is here comes a panic attack. It's starting to come on. And then if you have repeated panic attacks, it's really important to really think about, not only address the panic itself, but also wonder, kind of with a curiosity of why. Why are you having a panic attack? Where is this coming from? Something that you see or hear, something that you're doing, it's a person, whatever it's reminding you, your body is reacting to that.
Finish telling me about the day you collapsed.
And it's that inner child, that trigger that comes out of something that hasn't been addressed yet in your past. And so a therapist will help you address it and unpack it. And you may not want to unpack it. You may not want to address it. Maybe you spent all your life trying to avoid it. That's a problem. Because if you don't address those issues, if you don't address the underlying reasons for your panic attack, you're going to continue to have them. Tony Soprano was an adult. He was married. He had kids. He was a mob boss.
Beautiful, Artie. Thank you.
Enjoy.
Wait a minute. I'd like to propose a toast to my family.
And yet he still had these panic attacks because they were related all the way back to his childhood, before he got married, before he became an adolescent. These things happened, and he was in an environment that was toxic and traumatic in his life. And he probably would say, if you were talking to him, my parents were pretty rough. They didn't show a lot of love and affection, but I'm fine. I'm okay. And without really addressing, no, probably not okay. There are some things underneath there. It's not okay that your parents treated you that way. It's not okay that you grew up in an environment like that. And so his body was telling him, address this. All right, you didn't address it this time. I'm going to come out and have another panic attack. Now address it. Oh, not addressing it? All right, I'll come when you're least expecting it, and I'll come and say you need to address this. And then eventually multiple panic attacks come and they recur on multiple bases. Wake up! Wake up! Your body is trying to tell you, address these issues. And the best way is to address them with a therapist. Now, if you don't want to talk to a therapist, that's up to you. But I will say, if you say, I don't want to talk to a therapist because they're a quack, they don't know what they're talking about, they're just going to give me drugs to take, and you don't get help, then I want to encourage you. Think about this. The worst thing that could happen, you go to the therapist and you waste your time. That doesn't help. The therapist doesn't know what they're talking about. You waste your time. Now, you might waste, 50 minutes, an hour, the most? But what's the best thing that could happen? What if you went to a therapist and you talked about it and your therapist helped you unpack why you're having a panic attack and addressing that and resolving that and processing that? And what if it either lessened the frequency of your panic attacks or it eliminated them altogether? What would you choose? Would you choose to not go to a therapist and continue to say therapists don't help? Or would you choose to go to a therapist and get the help and maybe feel 100% better? I get it. I get it. But if you say, no, I am not going to go, I don't want to show weakness. Think about your family, those who love you. Are they concerned that you're having all these panic attacks? Think of them. Maybe that should be your motivation. But Tony Soprano was this rough and tough mob boss. You don't cross Tony. He would hurt you, and then he would have the soft side. And you know what? That's a lot like his childhood. His parents were ruthless to him, especially his dad. And yet then he would say, and maybe show some affection. It was this constant conflict of not knowing, where do I fit in this family? Where do I fit with my parents? And that insecurity that he had continued to age with him. And that inner child was always questioning, where do I fit in? Do you love me? Am I protected? Are you going to like me? And we see that throughout the Soprano episodes. We see that by watching Tony Soprano. And this tough guy who hurts people and intimidates people also had this inner child that he could not master. He couldn't control those panic attacks. And that is something that panic attacks do. That doesn't matter who you are or how rich you are or how tough you are or what gender you are or what status you are. It's going to come after you if you have unresolved issues in your life. It will. You're going to have these triggers. It's going to bring out the inner critic in you. And when you don't address them and just kind of shrug them off and say, oh well, I'm fine. Don't bother with me. When you do that, it's going to, well, one, it's not going to go away. It could get worse. And then two, it's going to really affect those around you. You know, they're going to be concerned about you. When the opening scene, when they decided to, whoever made that decision to create this opening scene of the pilot, by the way, the pilot season, and that's a risk that they took. And I love that they took it, because this guy, Tony Soprano, was watching these ducks and he was looking at them, enjoying them and feeding them. And then they took off. And then all of a sudden, Tony starts to have the trigger and he starts to panic and he falls and he faints. And that scene where the grill exploded, man, that was awesome. How cool was that? It was so fun to see that, because that kind of like a foreshadow of Tony falling and the after effects of what happens to those around him. You know that scene where he falls on the ground and he drops the lighter fluid on the grill. The grill explodes, and as the grill is exploding, his wife and his kids come running, and they're afraid. What an amazing foreshadow that is. Tony, this tough guy, smoking a cigar, watching the ducks. Then he has a panic attack. He faints and he drops the lighter fluid on the grill, and he's on the floor as his wife and his kids come running, thinking that something terrible has happened. And then the grill explodes. That is a foreshadow of The Sopranos. And throughout all of the episodes of The Sopranos, Tony shows the tough guy, but also the soft guy. He's a dad. He loves his family, but don't cross him. Whatever you do, don't cross Tony. And as he was watching those ducks, it was a metaphor, something that he wasn't thinking, but his body was showing that the ducks were a family unit. And he couldn't protect the ducks. They left, they flew away. And that brought out the panic attack in Tony. And the writers were amazing. They were brilliant in this because they took a risk and they thought, well, let's just open the scene with a panic attack. Wow. I love it. And as a therapist, this therapy scene, oh, so cool to be able to talk about how the outside of Tony is this tough guy. He'll kill you. He'll maim you. He'll take your money. He'll intimidate you. He'll say all these things to you. And then on the other side, it's his soft side, his inner child. And he can be loving and affectionate, but in the blink of an eye, can hit you in the face.